What's up, guys? Welcome to the Rieger Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Rieger. Today we're going to be hitting right off the bat the NBA trade deadline recap. Who looks the best after this trade deadline? Whose title odds have gone up the most? What the James Harden, Ben Simmons deal means for Philly and Brooklyn, respectively, and a couple other teams who maybe should have been more active at the trade deadline who weren't, and what the rest of the season is going to look like for some of those teams, including my very own New York Knicks. Right off the bat, let's get started with this Sixers-Nets trade. Obviously, the biggest news coming out of this deadline was the Sixers finally unloaded Ben Simmons, sent him to the Nets for the disgruntled James Harden. So disgruntled star traded 1-for-1 with alongside Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, 2 future first-round picks coming from Philadelphia to Brooklyn. And Paul Millsap will be accompanying James Harden to the Sixers after the two teams had, kind of haggled back and forth for the past few days. There were some conflicting reports. Brian Windhorst of ESPN was the first to report that this was a legitimate trade negotiation that was going on between the two teams. And then there was some back and forth. Wojnarowski was pretty adamant that this wasn't really happening. A couple of other reports were coming. It's hard to believe everything you see on Twitter and on Reddit when it comes to the trade deadline, because everyone's itching to just be the guy who, people are going to be saying, oh, he knew from the start. Whether or not that's BS or not is pretty not important for those guys, it seems. In the majority of cases, you can trust guys like Shams and Woj and Brian Windhorst, but there are some guys who, are just kind of putting stuff out there to put stuff out there. But yeah, so the biggest thing for me right now is all this talk about Daryl Morey. He played his cards right. He waited and was adamant about getting, at one point he was saying a top 30 guy for Ben Simmons. And then he lowered that to top 40. And a lot of people, including myself, were thinking, you're not going to get that for Ben Simmons. He hasn't played at all throughout the entire season. Why would anyone be trading something like that, a top 40 player for Ben Simmons, who has not yet shown that he has done anything this year at all? The only thing he has done successfully is blow his opportunity to win any money to get paid any of his money for this season. And yet here we go. Here we are. Disgruntled star comes into the fold, someone that Daryl Morey and the Sixers wanted as early as last year when Harden was done in Houston. He wanted out, and he gained weight. He was out of shape. His teammates in Houston were sick of him being there. Boogie Cousins was the guy who was like, "Get this guy out of here. We want guys who want to win, who want to be part of the team." Even though Boogie lasted just probably a few more months than James Harden did in Houston. Sorry. And now, if you look at it, this is the second team Harden has given up on in 2 years. The Houston thing I get. I don't like the way he went about it. It's hard. It seems to be hard for a guy to commit to a team that he has been trying over and over again for years and years. I think he was in Houston for 7 seasons. To come so close, especially with that 1 year with Chris Paul getting his hamstring injured in the Western Conference Finals when the Rockets were up 3-2, a heartbreaking blow to James Harden's, potential finals appearance and championship going up against that Cavs team, which unfortunately for him didn't end up happening. It's hard for a guy to kind of commit himself to, go through the rebuilding process, even though there was like some potential, there was promise. You don't want to go through in the prime or the waning years of the prime of your career. You're going to sit through the rebuilding process with a team out in Houston who, isn't going to be good for another couple of seasons, even with the addition of, Jalen Green and some of the other young guys that they have out there. So I kind of got that. I hated the way he went about forcing the trade, but then he finds himself in Brooklyn, plays all of 16 games all together with KD and Kyrie Irving, who were billed as, the future of offense in the NBA, the best offensive team we're ever going to see. These 3 guys together is going to be unbelievable. Who needs defense? These guys have it. Who's going to be able to stop them? They stopped themselves. The injury bug stopped them. They're political beliefs stopped them. Political beliefs, I should rephrase it. Their personal beliefs about vaccination status, that was a big cause of frustration between Harden and Kyrie Irving. Obviously, I know they're not going to say that publicly, and even with reports that Kyrie and James Harden didn't get along, especially once Kyrie was back into the lineup playing only away games, it seems like they're not going to say it out loud. Those two guys, they're not going to want to talk about it because, why would you go out and publicly say that, especially when they were on the same team with each other? And, I got to admit, like, you kind of get where Harden's coming from. You kind of get why he's frustrated. He didn't want to be in a situation where he was surrounded by a rebuilding team after being surrounded by a team that was centered around him for so long. He seemed to not want to be doing that anymore. Now it seems like he maybe wants more of that that offense to be built around him, which doesn't make sense, especially if he's going into Philly with Joel Embiid. I mean, yeah, he's James Harden, but Joel Embiid is the favorite for MVP right now. If it's not Jokic, it's Embiid. And if you're James Harden going into that situation, you cannot be looking at that as, now I have my own team again with this co-star I get to play with. It's, I'm going to go help Joel Embiid win a championship. I want to win my first championship, but I'm going to go there, and my job is to be the guy that Ben Simmons couldn't be. And I'm going to be the guy who's going to help propel Joel Embiid into a position where he can contend for an NBA championship. It's very odd, I think, the pairing of Harden and Embiid. I mean, if you have two of the top 20, top 15 guys in the league playing together, that's never going to be a bad thing. It's just, if the fit isn't right, I'm having a hard time thinking about how they're going to be sharing the ball. Although I did have that thought when Harden was coming into Brooklyn to play with Kyrie and KD, and that did work. When they played together, they were fantastic. 13-3 in the 16 games they played together, and that offense was absolutely terrific. And him transitioning his game from being what he had to be in Houston, where he is, on ball, the guy with the ball in his hands, he's dribbling throughout the shot clock. Basically, you have four other guys at the three-point line spread out around him, like giving him what he needs. He had that Clint Capella pick and roll. That's not what Embiid is going to be. There's going to be a bit of that, I'm sure. It's not like that won't happen, because as much as Embiid has become such a ball-dominant player, and a terrific ball-dominant player, I think he still can easily fit into that semi Clint Capella position where there are plays where you can run where it's just a pick and roll. You got the pick and pop with Embiid being able to take a step outside. He's shooting 35% from three this year, or a bit under, I believe. I think it's 32 actually. But his true shooting percentage is well over 60. He's having, like I said, an MVP caliber season with a team that's kind of nothing right now. It's not a team that is built really to be successful with Joel Embiid at the ball dominant spot. You had Seth Curry, who I think is a great fit with Embiid. We saw when he played with JJ Redick. That's the type of guy that really can succeed with Joel Embiid. And then I think that definitely propped up Seth Curry's trade value in this trade. I know that the Nets probably were going for Thibault or Tyrese Maxey, who again both of those guys have been terrific this year, in their respective roles on the 76ers. Seth Curry, like JJ Redick was a few years ago, was just the perfect guy to be like running around Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid setting picks. Other guys are, the other team is defending hard on Embiid because what he can do from the three-point line in, how he can drive, how he can take the ball to the rim, how he can beat guys when he's posting them up. And Seth Curry was like the perfect guy to just like kind of run around that, come off tight around picks, and roll around and get open for a three-point shot. I don't think James Harden is that type of guy. Actually, I seriously doubt James Harden is that type of guy. He's totally going to – like his off-ball play is pretty questionable Because if you look at, he's played with two of the best point guards in the past 25 years, arguably the number 2 and 3 best point guards the past 25 years behind Steph Curry, being Kyrie Irving and Chris Paul. It didn't work with Chris Paul, not just because of the injury thing, but because it's hard when you're James Harden to not be the guy with the ball in your hands, and it's hard when you're Chris Paul to not be the guy with the ball in your hands. I mean, look at what Chris Paul is doing in Phoenix right now. That's the perfect team for him. That is the perfect team. That what they have going on there, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Phoenix, but what they have going on in there is perfect for Chris Paul. Harden hasn't had a perfect team for him since his MVP season, and this Nets team, he had to kind of morph his game very impressively, I might add, to play alongside Kyrie and KD, and then Kyrie was the one playing off the ball because Harden needs that. He needs to be basically the point guard. Now, Maxi's the point guard on this Sixers team. And I'm assuming the starting lineup is probably projected to be Tyrese Maxey, James Harden, Tybal, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. Now, that's not the ideal Harden lineup. It's not the ideal Joel Embiid lineup, but it's better than what they were before. And I'm sure James Harden is going to be happier with that than he was with Brooklyn. I have no doubt about that in my mind, because instead of getting half of a season with Kyrie Irving playing only away games, and KD being out for months, and you basically having to man the helm with your second best player on the floor, sometimes being a Nicholas Claxton, stretches of James Johnson being the second, in terms of eye test being the second guy on the floor. Cam Thomas has been great. Obviously, the Nets are just like completely sliding, and I don't think they would have. I know they wouldn't have made this trade unless Harden wanted out, and he's the one who's saying, the reports are, oh, he didn't want to say he wanted out because he doesn't want to look bad, dude. If the reports about you are that you want out of Brooklyn, whether or not you say it or ask for that trade doesn't matter anymore. You're not happy and you want out. You weren't happy in Houston, you wanted out. And now you're in Philly. And now the clock starts ticking for Daryl Morey and the 76ers. How long can they keep James Harden happy in his role? And he should be happy. He should be grateful. He should have been grateful that he got to play with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I get that he was frustrated because Kyrie is only playing away games and Kevin Durant's out, and he doesn't want to have to carry that kind of load. He's older now. He's worn out. Like Charles Barkley said during the All-Star draft the other night, now that he's on Philly, he's going to be healthy. I don't think that's necessarily completely true, but as of today, on Saturday, the report is that he's going to be playing Tuesday against Boston. That's what it seems like. So whether or not that's because he just got traded or because he actually is recovered from whatever was going on with him, we're not going to know that. But it is still funny. It's still funny that that's what's going on. Paul Millsap himself was also unhappy in Brooklyn. The two parties decided to mutually split up earlier in the season. We had just been waiting to see where he would land. I thought he was going to be a buyout guy. Obviously, ends up being a part of this trade. Kind of covers Philly's ass for giving away Andre Drummond as their backup big. I mean, Millsap is not nearly what he was even 2 years ago with Denver. But he is big. He's a big guy. I get why he wasn't happy playing in Brooklyn. They have such a crowded spot in his particular niche. They got James Johnson, Blake Griffin. Now they've got Andre Drummond kind of as a body to throw at Embiid, I would assume. I haven't even started talking about Ben Simmons yet, and I will in a second. I just think the whole Harden thing is to me is the more fascinating aspect to this, because the Sixers turned a guy who's not playing for them at all and probably wasn't going to play with them unless there was no other situation where he was going to be able to get paid, as in Ben Simmons. They turned Ben Simmons, a guy who's not playing, Seth Curry, who was their second best shot creator behind Embiid, and Andre Drummond, who was their backup big man. They turned that into James Harden. That's pretty damn good. You're basically turning Seth Curry and Andre Drummond and 2 future first-round picks into James Harden. Now, this comes after them not trading for the Harden Ben Simmons deal to Houston at the beginning of last year when Harden was already unhappy with Houston. There was a deal in place that was going to be Philly sends Ben Simmons to Houston for James Harden. Ben Simmons' camp believed that was going to happen. A lot of people believed that that was the deal in place until Brooklyn stepped in because KD really wanted James Harden in Brooklyn with him. I think the thing that held it back for Philly was, I believe it was Thibault. I don't think Morey wanted to, or was Morey even Morey was the in charge by then. But yeah, I don't think, yes, he was, because Houston didn't really necessarily want to deal Harden to the guy who had just left them. And I totally get why you want to hang on to Thibault, especially if you know that you need wing defenders alongside Ben Simmons. I'm sorry, alongside James Harden if you're going to be trading the Ben Simmons for James Harden. And now they were able to keep Thibault to make up for that lack of defense that Harden is going to bring. Because Maxey and Harden and Tobias Harris they're not above average defenders. I think it's safe to say Harris is a fine defender when it comes to like average sized fours. He's decent. He is definitely the odd guy out in Philly. I can't feel good to know that, you know, your team was trying to package you with the guy who didn't want to play for the team and basically throw your salary out after paying you the giant contract they gave you a few years ago. That cannot feel good. But looking forward, I like the way this team looks, especially now that Shake Milton is back from injury. He just played last night for the first time in, I think, 18 games, which is great for them to have him back coming off the bench. Korkmaz, Danny Green, Georges Niang. The only thing that they have to kind of tweak is the backup big, because you can't throw Millsap out there when you're playing. If they have to play Milwaukee in the playoffs, who have Serge Ibaka now, who's guarding Giannis, first of all? Matisse Thybulle, I would assume, is guarding Giannis. And Embiid will guard Ibaka. And whatever, that's good. That's fine. What happens when Thybulle gets in foul trouble from hacking at Giannis? Who guards it? Korkmaz? Danny Green? Danny Green is a washed-up version of himself, even from last year. He's not nearly the same. You want to be able to have a big man who can slide in and help out that wing guy so he doesn't get into foul trouble. And that's not really necessarily going to be Embiid, because Embiid doesn't want to be the guy in foul trouble. And that was going to be Drummond. Drummond was going to be able to come off the bench, give Embiid a breather, help out guarding against Giannis when they needed him most. Now, if you look forward to the buyout market, some names that have been floating around: Robin Lopez, Tristan Thompson, DeAndre Jordan, even James Johnson from Brooklyn, because they do need to waive. Brooklyn does need to waive one guy to make room for the uneven trade that they just made. But I would say they have to get one of these guys. If these guys are being bought out, if Indiana buys out Tristan Thompson or Orlando buys out Robin Lopez, which I'm pretty sure will happen. Tristan Thompson was just thrown into that Sabonis deal just to make salaries match. And I had never understood why Robin Lopez went to Orlando. I guess to give some veteran presence to like Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter Jr. He doesn't really play there when those guys are healthy, which they have been, surprisingly, which is great for them. DeAndre Jordan, I don't even know. I don't really understand what LA is doing at all. They didn't do anything at the trade deadline. So I'm assuming they're waiting for a buyout market, but then they would have to waive someone. So they're going to have, I think it would be a DeAndre Jordan. I think that was already rumored to be happening earlier in the season. So one of those guys, Philly has to target. They have to get in touch with them as soon as that buyout market opens up, because they need a backup big who is not Charles Bassey, who's played, 23 games this year for the Sixers, I think. I mean, if you look at Philly's like most minute combinations on the floor, It's Curry, Embiid, Harris, and then Embiid, Harris, Maxey, Curry, Harris. It's not Drummond, but it is Seth Curry. So the size coming off the bench maybe wasn't the biggest problem for them because they have been decent without having that kind of backup big, playing as many minutes as you would expect one team would need. But you did throw away Seth Curry. You're turning that into James Harden. So now it's going to be James Harden, Embiid, Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey playing the most minutes together, with Thibault coming in as the defensive guy to start the games, and now Shake Milton coming in as probably your sixth man. I really think they need to pick up at least a Tristan Thompson. Because then basically you traded just Seth Curry and the 2 first rounds to get James Harden. Because if you get Tristan Thompson, that's a downgrade from Drummond, but it's still something. It's still something similar to what he was able to do. It's still something that would definitely benefit you, even if it's not a great defender. It's a body to throw. And I think people forget how important that is when it comes into the playoffs. They shorten the rotations. You got only 8 or 9 guys at most playing in these playoff games that are close, that are tight. You need a guy who can play behind your star. So, and behind the guy who's guarding the best player on the other team. So if Matisse Thybulle is the guy who's guarding Giannis, you need a wing who can come in behind him if he gets in foul trouble. And is Tobias Harris going to be able to guard Giannis? No. Is Danny Green going to be able to guard Giannis? No. But their bodies to throw at him. And Embiid needs to be able to have a guy who can back him up and throw a body to against some other guys too. You got to be able to bang around. And yeah, so that's basically what I'm thinking from terms of Philly's perspective. There's a few more tweaks they need to make. Obviously, the trade deadline is over, so you're just looking at the buyout market. I think you just go full throttle this season. You try to keep Embiid healthy and Harden healthy, but you got to win games. You want to get good playoff positioning. You want to get that home court advantage. Let me see what 538 right now, as of right now, is projecting that the 76ers would finish 3rd in the East with a 50-32 record, an 8% chance of winning the finals, 17% chance of making the finals, so winning the Eastern Conference. They sit behind Miami, who, according to 538 projections, is going to finish 1st in the East, and Milwaukee, who will finish 2nd. Oh, wow, they have Boston at 4th, Cleveland at 5th, Chicago at 6th, Toronto at 7th, and then Brooklyn in 8th. And I totally think Brooklyn's going to have to play in the playing game, which is really going to be fun. And obviously, I think it should be very clear that this trade, that from Brooklyn's perspective, is the opposite from Philly's perspective. Brooklyn is coming at this trade with the idea of Harden's not happy, Kyrie's playing half the season, KD's going to be out for a few more weeks at least. Even LaMarcus Aldridge is out for a time. Joe Harris is probably done for the season. If he does come back, he'll be cold. He'll be coming in. Last time we saw him play, he was pretty horrible in that Milwaukee series. So let's trade Harden. Let's get this guy who is young, who we can have locked down for a few years, who we know can be successful alongside Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. That is a great fit, I think, for Ben Simmons. I truly do believe that. I think that's like the perfect situation for him to be in. It's what am I trying to say here?
What's your opinion on it?
Dead air.
Could you ease up on the crackers?
I'm getting bored with this.
It's a wing who can defend, but who is also your point guard. So Kyrie can play off ball with Ben Simmons. Kevin Durant, who's a shot creator on his own, doesn't need anyone to help him. But That's a great thing to have, especially if you're going against, again, a team like Milwaukee. If you're going to be playing against Milwaukee, you're going to want to have a guy like Ben Simmons to be able to guard Giannis so KD doesn't have to. And KD can stay out of foul trouble, can kind of get where he needs to go. And Ben Simmons can basically not shoot a shot. If he never wants to shoot a ball again in an NBA game, he doesn't have to. He really doesn't have to. Because he's got two of the best shot creators in the history of basketball playing alongside of him. And that's not what he had in Philly. Or at least he was being asked to do things he wasn't ready to do yet. And he doesn't seem like the guy who wants to be getting any better than he is. Which sucks, but that's the truth. That's the truth in it. We win as NBA fans because we get to see Ben Simmons play again, and as much shit as he got, and as difficult as it must be for him, and for fans, some fans to like accept that he is a really, really, really good player. He is. He's not the guy you want taking shots in the last 5 minutes of a tight playoff game, but he's a really, really good player. He's a potential defensive player of the year candidate. He's an all-NBA defensive player. He's going to be able to facilitate that ball really well. And you got Seth Curry playing alongside them too. So I'm thinking the ideal lineup for Brooklyn, if with everyone healthy, because I don't think we're going to get Ben Simmons for another 2 weeks or so. Simmons, Kyrie, Seth Curry, Kevin Durant, LaMarcus Aldridge. That seems like probably the best starting five that I could think of. If you're thinking of how Steve Nash wants to be running this ball movement offense, that's probably the best you're going to get. And then your six man, obviously, Patty Mills. And Blake Griffin, James Johnson, Nicholas Claxton coming off the bench. This isn't the year for Brooklyn. It really isn't. I don't know how they're still the favorites. I don't know how Vegas still has them as the favorites. I mean, they like clearly are falling down, and they're going to have to go. I mean, the only thing I really get is that Kyrie's only going to be able to play away games, and if they're not a high seed in the playoffs, then that means Kyrie's going to be playing more. And again, that only depends on if he's healthy and if KD's healthy. And if Ben Simmons is coming back and he's healthy. And then what happens how many games are going to be played now? Because you just traded away the one guy who was the one of your big three who was playing in home games as of late. You're going to be running out a starting five that has Patty Mills, Seth Curry, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, he's out too. It doesn't look good. They're going to keep losing. I mean, I can't see them turning it around, ending this. I mean, not to say that they're going to lose every game for the next 2 months, but until KD comes back, and until Simmons is back and is in their rotation and is playing regularly, I just don't. This team looks bad, and they're the Vegas. They're all right. They're tied. They're plus 450 right now. Vegas has Brooklyn at plus 450, tied with Golden State and Phoenix. I don't know what they're watching or Golden State and Phoenix look so much better than Brooklyn does. And guess what? Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins. Those guys get to play in home and away games. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, home and away. James Harden, Joel Embiid, home and away. Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Bam Adebayo, home and away. DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Vucevic, Lonzo Ball, home and away. They are banking on the fact that Ben Simmons is going to be able to help them right away. Because if they get into the playing game, Again, 538 has them finishing 8th. So they, according to 538's projections, let's see. They would be the 8th seed playing in Toronto. Okay, good. You get Kyrie. In Toronto against the Raptors for the 7-8 playing game to see who would play Milwaukee in the first round. So, first of all, Toronto's good. Toronto's a good team. Like, they just got better. They just got Thad Young. They're the 6'9" lineup. Every guy on that team, it seems like, besides Fred VanVleet, is 6'9". Siakam's been heating up. VanVleet's been hot. Love it. If I'm Brooklyn, I do not want to play Toronto in a playing game. But what else are you going to do? At least Kyrie gets to play in that game, and then I guess at least Kyrie gets to play in more games than none. More games against the Bucks away than he would if they were the higher seed. But you don't want to face Milwaukee in the first round. Because let's say you do beat them. Let's say you beat the defending champs with Giannis, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday. Drew on Kyrie, Giannis on KD. Simmons, even if he takes on Giannis, is he going to be in his own head again? What if they have to play Philly in the first round? March 10th, circle your calendars. Nets at Sixers. I hope to God everyone plays in that game. We need a Brooklyn-Philadelphia 7-game series. And if we don't get that, we at least need March 10th. Showdown. Kyrie playing away. KD back from injury. Simmons back from his absence against Joel Embiid, James Harden. I want that so bad. That's going to be the biggest boos we have heard in years when Ben Simmons comes back to Philadelphia. Unbelievable. I hope he plays. If he you got to play in that game. You got to play in that game if you're Ben Simmons. How weak would that look? I know he's dealing with reports are he's dealing with, mental health distress and stuff like that, which I totally get and I respect that. But come on. You gotta play in that game. It's gonna be worse, buddy. Ben Simmons, it's gonna be worse for your mental health if you don't play in that game. You're gonna get way more hate than you were before this. All right. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about Ben Simmons in a second, but I really think I should be moving on to the CJ McCollum to New Orleans Pelicans trade, which I think is great for New Orleans. I love this for New Orleans. It's sad to say that Portland is breaking up CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard backcourt, which we've all known and loved for so many years. But it's pretty cool that we could be seeing a lineup on this New Orleans team who has been playing better. New Orleans has been playing better in the past few games than they had been all season long. And they're in the 10th spot right now. They've been 5-5 over the last 10 games, but they have looked better. And now that they're in, so is Sacramento. These two teams, they're going to be racing for that 10th spot. This is going to be the most exciting race for the 10th spot we've ever seen. Although I am biased myself, I think New York is going to make a nice little push. We'll talk about that later in a sec too. But they're going to have a lineup of McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Jonas Valanciunas. I like that. Am I weird for liking that? I guess I am. We don't even know if Zion's going to play. We don't even know when Zion's going to be, when he's going to be playing again. They were on pace to be the worst team in NBA history. They were what 1-12 to start the season. They are now 22-33. Still bad, but fun. I think they're fun. And I don't know if Larry Nance Jr. All right, so here's what the trade was. Let me just It's McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., Tony Snell going to New Orleans. And Portland got back Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Josh Hart, Didi Louzada, Tomas Satoransky, 2022 first-round pick, protected 1 through 4, and a 2026 second-round pick and a 2027 second-round pick. They shipped Alexander-Walker to Utah right away. Louzada is a very raw prospect from Brazil. Satoransky is an NBA player. Josh Hart is the big thing coming back. Poor Josh Hart. He could be like Pat Connaughton on a contending team. He could be the Pat Connaughton on the Bucks if he was on any contending team. It's so sad. He's just never been on a good team, and he's a good player. He is. He's a good player. He's a solid player. If you have Josh Hart coming off your bench, and you're a 55 win, if you're a 50 to 55 win team, man, that's good. That's a good guy to have there. But he's just in basketball purgatory. Poor guy. Not the point. The point is, CJ McCollum is on the Pelicans, which I really like. CJ McCollum himself said he wanted to be. He liked the idea of going to New Orleans. There was no bad blood. If you get a chance, check out his Players Tribune article, Dear Portland. It was a great read, very emotional read. I'll just read a little quote from him here. He said, "This was not just a jersey to me. This was not just a franchise. This was my home. I got married here. I became a father here. I started my own business here. I literally put roots down in the soil here with my vineyard. A part of me will always be here in Oregon, especially with my community work. Maybe we didn't reach our ultimate goal. That's basketball. That's life. But damn it, Jennifer, if we didn't try." And I love that. A little callback to that one tweet. I think one of the best NBA Twitter moments of the past few years was, if you don't know, CJ McCollum replying to Trailblazers fan Jennifer saying, she said something along the lines of start talking once you're winning games, something like that, or once you win a championship or a playoff series or something like that. And all CJ McCollum replied was, "I'm trying, Jennifer. I'm trying." I love that, and I love that he threw that in. Great guy. I love CJ McCollum. I don't think there's anyone who would disagree with that. He's a great guy, and I'm glad he's getting out of the inevitable rebuild in Portland. I think it's very clear now that Nurkic and obviously Damian Lillard will be probably shipped off this summer. That's going to be exciting to talk about once that time comes. But if New Orleans is making this playoff push, play-in push to this 10th spot, I love that they picked up McCollum to play with Brandon Ingram, to play with Zion, to play with Valanciunas, who I love. I love Valanciunas. I also love Zion. Zion is like the sweetest guy. He's going to be a Knick someday. And whether that means we pay him an ungodly amount of money just to be hurt all the time, which would be the most Knicks thing to do, or he comes here and he's actually healthy and he plays really good, either way, he's going to be a Knick. I know. It's going to happen. I don't know if I've convinced myself that my delusions have become real or if I'm actually convinced. I'm going to take a quick break and then I will talk about some other trades. As I'm recording this Saturday afternoon, the Knicks are about to take on the Blazers for an early 5 o'clock game out in Portland on a surprisingly quiet trade deadline for the Knicks. I know myself included, a lot of people wanted to see some moves being made. A lot of people expected or maybe wanted Julius Randle to be gone. I know this is going to be unpopular, especially amongst some Knicks fans, but I'm glad they didn't move him. If we are going to move him, this is a terrible time to do that. He is at the lowest his value has been since we acquired Julius Randle at this point. The only thing worse than being a not good player is having been a great player and then regressing. So for me, honestly, I would rather wait until the offseason if we are going to move him, because there are a couple of teams who are probably going to be blowing it up. And if we're going to be getting rid of Julius Randle, I would like something back that could accompany this kind of youth movement that we as Knicks fans really want to see going on. And also cut him some slack, please, a little bit, just a little bit of slack. Right now, he's on the best stretch of the season. Past 4 games, he's averaging 29.5 points, 12 rebounds, shooting 48% from the field. We're 1-3 over that stretch. Over the time we've kind of been running at a higher pace, I think Thibs has been a bit more aware of what he has been doing wrong, and kind of for a while, he just had his head down and was kind of just driving ahead with what he wanted to be doing. I loved what I saw from them, obviously, against Golden State with that great win the other night that unfortunately was without RJ, who I'm hoping and looks like isn't that bad of an injury, but we got to see some Cam Reddish, which I'm really, really glad about. I'm really excited about him. I wish we had moved Alec Burks and Kemba. I think there are some teams out there who have some stuff that they'd be willing to give up for a kind of off-the-bench scoring guy like Alec Burks, or a kind of ball-handling guard that some teams kind of desperately need, especially the Lakers, but the Lakers have nothing to give up. So I don't know what that trade would even be. I just kind of wish that those 2 guys had been moved. Not that I don't love them. I just don't think that right now the fit is there for us. We should be giving some of those minutes to Quickly, Kemba's minutes specifically to Quickly, to Quentin Grimes, who is my favorite of the youngsters outside of RJ Barrett so far this season, and Mitchell Robinson, of course. But I don't really consider him so young anymore. It's his 4th season. He's getting there. He's definitely established himself as a starting center in this league, as a competent starting center. He had that amazing game against the Jazz. We just didn't win it. And I think that's how the season is going to kind of roll through. I think we're going to see a much better second half of the season. Now that Randall kind of knows we're sticking with him, at least for now, there's a lot of mental stuff going on with him. I've been saying it all year long. This man needs to be in therapy. He needs to be and again, that is not a disrespectful thing. I am not making light of that. I'm saying there is some kind of mental health situation going on with Julius Randle, and it has to be addressed, not just as a basketball player, not just as a fan of the team who wants to see him succeed, who is sick of seeing him, not have the energy, not have the motivation, not have the camaraderie with his teammates, sitting far away from them during the huddles, not picking up Obi when he falls down. It's more about him as a person. We cannot give up on him this easily. We cannot give up on Julius Randle as a person, as a player, this quickly. He gave us our first playoff appearance since Melo, and the most fun season we've had in so long. Seeing Julius Randle go off last year was the most fun we have had as Knicks fans in years. And we're just going to throw him off to the side like that didn't happen. I don't know. I don't like that at all. I don't like the way he's playing. I don't like his attitude. I don't like any of it. Shouldn't be. I mean, booing him. You're gonna boo him if he's looking like that, playing like that, right? But I'm sick of this guy's a bum. Get him out of here. Every player goes through this. That Atlanta series fucked with his head. I'm telling you, that Atlanta series messed with him. He has not been the same since then. And now that we have, kind of affirmed in him that we are not moving on from him, that we're going to stick with him for now, I think he's gonna start stepping up. And RJ's going to come back from this injury. If he can continue that stretch he's on, the two of them together, they could be really good together. They could complement each other very well. And I really want to see it. And I don't want to give up on it yet. I do not want to give up on this iteration of the Knicks yet, especially because we don't have Derrick Rose right now. And it's horrible. It is horrible that a team in the NBA is relying on their bench point guard to bring energy into games to win. That is horrible. But it's the truth. That's the situation we're in. That's where we're at. And yes, I want to see the young guys play as much as they can. And Thibodeau has to start accepting that those guys have to get more minutes. Obi's got to get more minutes. Quentin Grimes, incredible. I love the guy. I want to see him play every minute of the night. He can't run these guys into the ground when the bench gets hot and he has to keep them in the fourth. He can't do that. So start with them. Play them early on. Let them get hot earlier on. That's just my 2 cents about that situation. The fact that we didn't make any trades is really upsetting. I feel like the Knicks are just always that team that's just like sitting there at the trade deadline, almost like waiting for other people to be like, hey, New York, we're going to help you out. We don't want your guys, but we'll help you. That's not going to happen. What was the biggest trade deadline move we made? Derrick Rose. I don't even think that was a trade deadline. That was a bit before the trade deadline. But still, that was a great move. When we offloaded Marcus Morris for those picks, that was a great move. Just don't do much. We don't do much at the trade deadline. Whatever. I'm not happy about it, but I'm okay. I'm accepting. I'm accepting of it. I just think moving forward, it has to be a lot more. There has to be a lot more to show us as fans that they're in on this, that they're in on it, and that they want to win. There's a poll up on Knicks Reddit right now. I'll pull it up. Would you rather have the team be in a playing game or miss the playoffs? Posted by that other guy, 3, on the Knicks Reddit. A lot of people saying they would rather have the Knicks make the play-in tournament than miss the playoffs and get a better draft pick. And I agree. It's important to try and maintain a winning culture. That's the choice. Make the play-in. It's important to try and maintain a winning culture. I'm glad to see that. I'm glad the optimism is still there. I'd much rather be like Charlotte than Detroit right now. And yeah, Charlotte built that with the draft, LaMelo and Miles Bridges. They also signed Gordon Hayward. He's been good for them. They just traded for Montrezl Harrell because they had the pieces to do that because they made smarter moves. They're not the best team in the East. They've had down seasons. I'm glad we're not Washington. We have RJ Barrett on our team, guys. RJ Barrett. We should be happy about that. We should be looking forward. We should not be walking around with our heads down, shaking our heads. Screw this guy, screw Julius Randle, fire Thibs. Come on. This is why guys don't want to play in New York. And everyone's gonna say, everyone's gonna be like, oh, if they can't play in New York, they can't handle it. That's their fault. What other city do the fans treat the players like this? We did it to Ewing. I don't know why. We didn't really do it to Melo. I feel like we should have. if we're gonna be doing it to these other guys. Pascal Siakam has a horrible season. They go back to playing Toronto. The fans don't boo him. I mean, granted, he did win a title there. It's a better example. Bradley Beal in Washington. Great start to the season. Immediately turns around. Now they're a dumpster fire. Traded for Porzingis. Got rid of Montrez. Bradley Beal out for the season. No one is booing Kyle Kuzma. No one is booing Bradley Beal. Why? I'm not saying we shouldn't necessarily be doing it. I'm just saying it's just a little silly to me that it's so negative. It's such a negative. As if that is not going, as if the negative response to it, as if the anger and the booing and the get him off my team. I can't stand this guy. Look at him. I can't stand him. As if that's going to make him, oh, okay. Sorry. I didn't know it was upsetting you. I'm going to turn it around now. No, what's going to turn it around is affirmation from the team, from the fans. RJ Barrett could go 2 for 20. It's okay, RJ. Keep shooting. Keep getting out there. He's young. He's our future. That's how we're going to treat him. The second we pay him money and he doesn't live up to whatever random expectations we may have of him, I feel like it's going to happen. I feel like we were so spoiled last year, and so much of this is coming from people who were not there during the 17-win seasons. So much of this is coming from those people. I know it is. The people who could not give less of a crap about the Knicks when they were winning 17 games. They were there when they make the playoffs, and now we're not winning. Screw this guy. Get him off the team. Like they're gonna watch the games once we're at the bottom of the East again, rebuilding. Give me a break. Come on. It's miserable. It's miserable. It doesn't have to be that miserable. It doesn't have to be anger. I get it. I get angry. At the end of that Lakers game in overtime when we couldn't inbound the ball with 30 seconds left and we needed a quick score, I yelled out, I can't deal with this fucking team anymore. In that moment, it's so pissed off because of how awesome it was for RJ and Julius to be going off in that game, just to collapse, just for RJ to bring it back and hit that 3 to send to overtime. So pissed off for it to collapse like that. I didn't mean it, though. It was in the moment. I'm not going on Twitter afterwards saying, man, fuck this team, man. Fuck these guys. Get these guys off the team. Get Julius off the team. Fire Thibodeau. Give me a break. Give the team a break. Very frustrating. This is why people don't want to play in New York. Why do you think Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, the two guys who have the biggest problem with fans and media telling them how it is and telling them you're doing this and you're doing that, you're not living up to this, why do you think they wanted to play in a big market together? Doesn't make you think, why did they pick Brooklyn? They picked Brooklyn because there's no expectation in Brooklyn. For good or for better or for worse, there's no expectation. There's no fan base frothing at the mouth for a playoff win. And to me, I would have gone to New York to just be like, I'm going to make the Knicks a winning team again. But they didn't because of how frustrating it must be to be a player on the New York Knicks. It must be the most frustrating thing. The most frustrating place to play basketball is on the New York Knicks. And they are my team, and I love the fans, and I love the community we have, and I love going to the games, and we're all singing and screaming at walking out of the tunnel, win or loss. It's just these loud people on social media and people who really don't know what they're talking about on ESPN and on Twitter and on these other podcasts. People just do not know. It's like, oh, the Knicks are good last year. There's halfway through the season. Wow, the Knicks are good. The Knicks might be in the playoffs. Wow, the Knicks got home court advantage in the playoffs. Look at this. This is pretty cool. Lose game 1 to Atlanta. Trae Young hits that dagger. This Knicks team, they weren't real. They just got lucky getting that 4th seed. No one on this team is really going to make them win. And they were right. They were right. Julius Randle is not going to be the guy that makes us a contender. Derrick Rose being our best player, highest scorer in the playoffs? Come on. That can't be it. And it won't be it. That's my point. It's not going to be that way unless we keep thinking about it like that. We keep thinking like, this is bullshit. This is crap. Pessimistic. It's so easy to fall into that as a Knicks fan. And us being like that is what makes it so easy for ESPN guys to go on in the morning and just yell and say, they got to blow it up. We made one playoff series. Whatever. Recurring theme on this, and those of you who are listening and will be listening, I just hate mainstream sports media. It's horrible. And I'm going to get more into that on like a later podcast. I'm probably going to talk about my whole opinion on all that when there's less to talk about around the league. But yeah, it's just terrible. It's terrible. I really want to quickly talk about some other things that went around the league during the trade deadline. Porzingis to Washington for Spencer Dinwiddie. I don't really get this trade at all. I mean, I get it for Washington. You pick up Porzingis. He's got 2 years left on his contract, so you have him like down, but he's always, you don't know if he's going to be playing next week. You don't know if he's going to be the guy you can rely on to be playing in back-to-back games. First of all, he's not, and that's why Dallas probably got rid of him. Also, I don't think him and Luka got along at all. I think they actually hated each other. Not hate each other. I just don't think they got along at all. And Doncic isn't really the type of guy who like needs a second star with him. He needs a team built for him. So they get Spencer Dinwiddie, I guess. I mean, like, I guess that makes sense in some way. You don't have to worry so much about Jalen Brunson this offseason if you have Dinwiddie. But Dinwiddie hasn't been good this year. And they also got Davis Bertans in the trade. I guess it makes the salary match, but he has been horrible. And he's the worst contract. He's one of the worst contracts in the NBA. There's a good argument that he's the worst contract in the NBA. 3 more years, $49 million. Barely really scored at all this year in Washington. It might be better for him in Dallas. It might be a better system for him. It might wake him up. I kind of like his fit next to Doncic if he can start becoming a more confident knockdown three-point shooter like he was before he came to Washington. But I just don't, I don't love this trade at all from either side. The Porzingis thing, it just seems like Washington was like, all right, fuck it. Peel's out for the season. Montrez go to Charlotte, and we'll get Porzingis and see what that does. He must be pissed off, Porzingis, going to Washington. Good for him, asshole. Okay, Montrezl Harrell going to Charlotte from Washington. Washington will receive Ish Smith and Vernon Carey Jr., who is a prospect that I know very little about. This is great for Charlotte, I think. I think that while he doesn't do what they need him to do defensively, Montrez, I think it'll be really good for the offensive motion that they have going with LaMelo and Miles Bridges, Gordon Hayward, and even Mason Plumlee. Having the Montrez Mason Plumlee big man combination, starting and backup, it's like instead of having like a really good center and a mediocre center backing him up to like make the average like in the middle, they just got 2 like very middle of the road guys. And it's kind of sad to say because Montrez was so good just a few years ago, and ever since he went to LA, it's just not been great for him. I like this for the Wizards, because clearly it wasn't working with Montrezl Harrell. They've got to blow it up in Washington. They started out so great. And I did this write-up before the season about them. And I liked them before the season started. And I was like, yes, validation. I nailed this one. And then 15 games into the season, it turned around, and now they're terrible again. But it is something to say for Washington that they do have like Kuzma's been good. Kuzma's been good for them. KCP, I feel like should have been traded. He was a good piece to get for like some future. It feels like they're not like completely committing to blowing it up because they just traded for Kristaps Porzingis. So maybe their idea is pulling Porzingis. That convinces Beal that like there's some kind of future here. Then you get Beal, Porzingis, Kuzma kind of being. You got Corey Kispert, Rui Hachimura kind of playing behind them. Denny Advia, who I really like a lot. They're just so in the middle of this, like, yeah, we have these like 2 guys now who are going to be paying a lot of money, who are like older, who probably want to be winning. And then we have these like young guys that we want to develop. We're going to do it at the same time, which is kind of the Charlotte plan. But Charlotte is way more develop the young guys, and it just happened to be that they're awesome. Miles Bridges and LaMelo Ball are just fantastic. It worked out perfectly for them. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, Washington's a weird one. Another one I want to talk about is Marvin Bagley, Serge Ibaka. So Marvin Bagley will be sent from Sacramento to Detroit. The Pistons will send some picks to Milwaukee. Milwaukee will send Dante DiVincenzo to Sacramento. And the Clippers get Rodney Hood, Semi Ojeleye from Milwaukee. And the Kings also get Josh Jackson and Trey Lyles. The biggest piece being Milwaukee gets Serge Ibaka. Awesome. Very awesome for them. They don't have Brook Lopez for a while. It seems like he won't be back for another few months at least. I really haven't heard anything back from him. As if I'm talking to him. I really haven't heard any updates about him lately. And that could just be me missing out on that. But it seems like the writing on the wall is that if they're bringing Ibaka, it seems like Brook Lopez isn't going to be back for a while, and that's great. I think Ibaka has looked really good since he's been back for the Clippers, and it seems like the Clippers are kind of – I don't really know what they're doing. They just – like throughout the past week, they got Rodney Hood, Norman Powell, Robert Covington, Semi Ojeleye. Cool. That's a cool play-in team. It's really cool if they have Kawhi and Paul George. So if that's their five next season, Rodney Hood coming off the bench, and you have Norman Powell, you get Norman Powell, Robert Covington, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Zubac. That's a really good defensive starting five. That's a pretty good offensive starting five. You have Powell, George, and Kawhi and Zubac. That's I like that. I do. And Mann and Luke Kennard off your bench. That's pretty good. I don't know exactly what their plan is for this season. It seems like they're just kind of moving some guys around, trying to just get people that they know that they'll have next year to just start kind of working with them, getting them into their system, what they want to be doing with that. It's just weird. It's just weird to me. I don't know what their plan is. And now Norman Powell is going to be, I think it's 3 years that they get from him now, not including this. I think this is the first year of a 4-year deal, and I could be wrong about that. But anyway, it's multiple years, and they got stuff for Ibaka, who was going to be a free agent this summer anyway. But yeah, the biggest winner from this is the Bucks. I'm glad Bagley is going to be getting another opportunity in Detroit, where anyone could get an opportunity, and that'd be cool to see him play alongside Cade. And maybe Killian Hayes, if Killian Hayes does anything anytime soon. I really thought Jeremy Grant was going to be moved away from Detroit, but he ultimately wasn't. And that probably came down to he just didn't want to be like that backup like he was in Denver. He wants to be the guy, and he's not going to be the guy long in Detroit because that's Cade Cunningham. Let's see. What else? Who else should we talk about? Daniel Tice to Boston. Fine. Goran Dragic to San Antonio for Thaddeus Young going to Toronto. And Drew Eubanks also going from San Antonio to Toronto. This is really it's basically Toronto sending picks to San Antonio. And then San Antonio's going to buy out Goran Dragic's contract, I would assume. And so basically San Antonio turned Thaddeus Young, Drew Eubanks into a 2022 first-round pick. Lottery protected. Toronto's not going to be in the lottery. They're going to be they're a playoff team. They're a playoff team. And they just got better. Thaddeus Young, I think, fits in great with that team. Drew Eubanks, he's also shown some spark in San Antonio behind Jakob Poeltl. It's really cool to see that Eubanks is going to have a bit more time to shine in Toronto because they really have a center problem, and that kind of helps them out a lot. Jakob Poeltl's been good for San Antonio, so I get why they would be sending away Eubanks. I like this trade for both sides. I think Toronto shores up their rotation a bit more for a playoff push, whatever that may be, first, second round exit. And Goran Dragic is going to get to pick what contender he signs with. I like the Bucks. I do. I like him going to the Bucks. I think that would be a cool pairing to have him maybe coming off the bench for Drew Holiday, or put him in the starting lineup instead of Grayson Allen. Dragic, Drew, Middleton, Giannis, Ibaka starting five. Great. That's awesome. They're still my favorite to win it all. To win in the East. I think Phoenix. I think Phoenix, Milwaukee rematch this time. Phoenix gets the better of them. Just because it's been covered for a while, it just happened a few days ago. I'll just quickly touch on Sabonis for Halliburton and Buddy Hield. What the hell is Sacramento doing? Like De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, cool offensive pairing. Harrison Barnes got to stay. So now you compete with New Orleans for the 10th seed. And you just gave up one of the best young players in the league. Granted, you got Sabonis, who is he's a young guy. He's under contract for 2 years. They really want to make a postseason appearance. But it doesn't count as the playoffs if you lose in the play-in tournament, Sacramento. So your streak, your drought won't be over just because you make the playing game. Yeah, I don't really have much more to say because it's just been covered so much in the past few days, just because it happened a few days ago. Same with the Norm Powell, which I touched on a minute ago. Yeah. So the only other real thing I wanted to touch on was Denver, because they didn't really make any big trades. And the biggest news coming out for them today was Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray will be cleared by the end of the regular season, according to Mike Singer of the Denver Post, which is super, super huge for the Denver Nuggets. 538 has them as the 5th seed in the West. And I think that's probably how they're going to end up. It depends on how early Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. come back, that could even go up. I could see them overtaking the Jazz if the Jazz continue to be an unstable team as they have been for the past few weeks. I know Mitchell's back. Gobert should be back soon. But I still think Denver with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are better than Utah fully healthy. I truly believe that. Because Jokic is the best player in the NBA right now. It is him and or Embiid. Embiid will probably win MVP just because like the MVP is it's clearly very much about narrative. And the pushback against Jokic winning MVP last year was weirdly negative because the team wasn't good. But he had one of the best seasons in the history of the NBA. And he is again this year. He's the best player in the league. He really is. He is by definition the most valuable player in the league in terms of like what he does for his team. And if those two guys are coming back, I really like them. I really like them to upset maybe like the Warriors. So if they're going to be the 5th seed according to 538, they played you. So if everything goes out the way 538 is projecting, it's Utah hosting Denver in a 4-5 series in round 1. If they have enough time with Jamal Murray and MPJ before that series starts, I'm taking Denver. I mean, they have the best player in that series, which typically that's how playoff series tend to go, especially if it's a very close matchup like this one would be. I would take Denver. And then potentially having to face Phoenix in the next round, which is really tough because Phoenix is the best team in the NBA. And if they are fully healthy and they have had time to gel, maybe they give Phoenix a run for their money, but I can't see them beating them. I'm just saying that the earlier these guys come back, the less early in the playoffs, Nuggets would have to face the Suns. And the Nuggets are like very slept on just because of the injury problems that they've had. But Jokic has kept them in the playoff race, which I think is so impressive. And it's just as impressive for Embiid to have kept the Sixers in the playoff race. So right now, Denver's in 6th. They're 2.5 games behind Dallas for the 5th. They're 30-25. Philly is in 5th in the East. They are 1 game behind Milwaukee for the 4th seed. They're 33-22. They are 2.5 games behind Miami for the 1 seed. Enter James Harden. Denver stays like this, and Jamal Murray and MPJ come back within, hopefully by middle March, before playoffs start. They go on a little run to end the season. They end up as the 4th seed. Get home court advantage over Utah or maybe Memphis. I don't see them catching Memphis at all. And I'm going to be talking about Memphis soon on this podcast. There's a lot of teams to cover, guys. There's a lot to cover. And this was for me to be starting my podcast on this topic is very overwhelming, just because of how significant everything that went down was. But I'm going to end it here. Thanks for listening. I'm going to be posting pretty regularly, try to record a few times a week. Kind of just gave this a trial run to start off with. But yeah, definitely going to be a lot of Knicks stuff coming up the next few days, just because I want to get my thoughts out there before the season starts to turn around. And I don't want anyone to be saying that I wasn't on board with Julius Randle before his amazing stretch that is about to start happens. That is my prediction right now. But thanks for listening, guys. I will catch you all later. Be sure to give me a follow and share this podcast wherever you can. I'll talk to you soon.